A reader is a responsible adult who reads the instructions of the question paper and the questions to the candidate. This may involve reading the whole paper to the candidate, or the candidate may request only some words to be read. A reader may only also act as a communication professional, a practical assistant, a prompter and/or a scribe if permission has been given for these arrangements where necessary. Please see our video on other access arrangements for the role played by adults providing this support for candidates. A candidate and reader must not be overheard by or distract other candidates. This will also apply if the candidate uses a computer reader. Where the candidate and reader are accommodated in another room on a one-to-one basis, the invigilator may additionally act as the reader. However, in the exceptional circumstance where the reader is also the candidate's subject teacher, learning support assistant, or teaching assistant, he or she cannot additionally act as the invigilator. Readers may work with more than one candidate, but must not read the paper to a group of candidates at the same time, as this imposes the timing of the paper on the candidates. Where candidates only require occasional words or phrases to be read, 3 or 4 candidates may share one reader. The candidate will need to put their hand up or use a prompt card when he or she needs help with reading. If the group is accommodated in another room, away from the main examination room, a separate invigilator will be required. A reader must read accurately, have appropriate subject knowledge in order to act effectively as a reader in maths and science examinations and decode symbols and formulae with accuracy, only read the instructions of the question paper and questions and must not explain or clarify, must only repeat the instructions of the question paper or questions when a candidate indicates a specific need for help, only read the instructions or rubric of a paper testing reading and must not read individual questions or text, abide by the regulations since failure to do so could lead to the disqualification of the candidate. A reader may, dependent on factors including the candidate's needs or normal way of working, etc., help a vision-impaired candidate retrieve information found in diagrams, graphs, maps, and tables in response to a request from the candidate so that he or she has access to the same visual information as a sighted candidate. The candidate must make clear what help he or she requires. For example, a candidate with vision impairment asks the reader if an unlabeled shape on a diagram has 5 sides and is a pentagon. The reader can state how many sides the shape has, but cannot confirm that it is a pentagon. A reader may read numbers printed in figures as words. For example, 356 would be read as 356, but when reading the number it should also be pointed to on the question paper. An exception would be when the question is asking for a number to be written in words. For example, write the number 356 in words. Note, read this out as 356. Decode symbols and unit abbreviations in maths and science examinations for candidates who require this arrangement in order to access the assessment and where it reflects the candidate's current and normal way of working within the centre. This is not permitted in a music examination. If requested, give the spelling of a word which appears on the paper, but otherwise spellings must not be given. Read back, when requested, what the candidate has written without any emphasis on any errors. A reader must not advise the candidate regarding which questions to do, when to move on to the next question, nor the order in which questions should be answered. Readers may decode symbols and unit abbreviations in mathematics and science examinations for candidates who require this arrangement to access the examination and where it reflects their current and normal way of working within the centre. We would expect this to be for a candidate who is unable to independently access any of the text and symbols in questions. For example, A candidate with a significant visual impairment who cannot read Braille, cannot access tactile diagrams, or due to the severity of the impairment cannot access the standard modified enlarged papers. It would not be expected that a reader would decode symbols and unit abbreviations for the majority of candidates with learning difficulties or other disabilities who would be able to read the individual symbols or numbers. In this instance, the reader would point to the symbol. The term decoding means the naming of the symbol. It does not involve explaining when or how the symbol is to be used or describing the symbol. Examples of decoding include: the reader says 356. The reader reads each letter and number, CO2. The reader says 2 squared. The reader says less than or equal to. Centres must ensure that readers are appropriately trained and are able to decode symbols and unit abbreviations accurately. It's good practice for a reader to read out the reader memory aid to candidates as part of their instructions prior to the start of the examination. These state, "I am here to read for you in your examination. You must make clear what you want to be read. I can only read the instructions and the questions. I can repeat instructions, but only if you make it clear which instructions you want me to read. I cannot tell you which questions to choose. I cannot tell you when to move on to the next question. I cannot tell you which questions to do first. I can spell words if you ask me, but only words on the question paper. I can read back your answer, but only if you ask me. For GCSE English language examinations, I can read the questions in the writing section of the paper, but I cannot read any of the questions in the reading section, which would only need to be read out before the start of a GCSE English language examination.